Last week we talked about a marriage that was not thriving. We were not thriving, just the opposite. We talked about a marriage where two people who loved each other avoided meaningful time with each other. Last week we talked about a marriage where two people were drifting apart. You know what the problem was? Communication. This was us. This was our marriage. And if you haven't if you haven't seen this, go back and watch it. And I recommend you pause this video, go back and watch our previous video so you can realize how bad our marriage was. And the problem was communication, the root problem. Everything else is just a symptom. When you have marriages, you have this problem, you have that problem, most of it can go back to communication issues, good or bad, communication. Today we're going to talk about how we made our marriage right, how it all started when we learned how to communicate with each other. So stay tuned, we're going to talk about this. Here we go. From their book, Fierce Marriage, by Ryan and Selena Frederick. I recommend that book. I recommend their podcast, too, Fierce Marriage. And they have one for the family, too, where they talk about their kids. And they have, I think they have 3 or 4 girls. I'm going to say 4.
I think it's 4.
Yeah. They write, you have a direct line to your spouse's heart. Your words can give life or they can bring death. And one of my favorite verses in the Bible, and we talked about this last week, I listed a few. I'm just going to talk about one today. Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. The very last thing we did at the weekend to remember. This is like the highlight of the weekend. Everything else will lead up to this. The very end, we did a kind of like a marriage renewal. We signed a marriage renewal covenant, and it was awesome. It was like, that's the spark that got us going. Here are the first few lines of that covenant.
We make this vow, a sacred and lifelong promise, to unconditionally love one another like God loves us, to resist the forces that drive us apart, and to call others toward oneness with God and each other.
This covenant was made by a husband and a wife who had been married for over 12 years. And there were people there that had been married 1 year. There are people there that had been married 50 years. But we decided that we are not going to stay in an unfruitful marriage. The marriage that's not going the wrong direction. It is going somewhere, but the wrong direction. We're going to better our marriage. We're going to change our marriage. And so at the end of this marriage conference, we read that vow. We got it hanging on our wall. It's awesome. Right there in our bedroom. We look at it every night and we think, that means something. That is the start of a brand new marriage. After 12 years into it, we're starting all over. After we came home from the marriage retreat, we had a brand new outlook on life. We realized that we had some issues to work on, and most of the issues stem from communication problems. In our last episode, we listed the communication problems we have had and how it hindered us from having a thriving marriage. If you haven't watched that episode, I recommend you pause this right now, go watch our first episode, and then come back because you're going to be confused. Well, this is going to be a good episode. You're going to say, yeah, these are good. But then you go back and you realize, oh, they had a lot of problems. They did. So now you're going to see what we did to fix our problems. In this episode, we will discuss the communication changes we made and how we made these changes, the new way of our life. So here we go. And I call this our communication resolutions because it's not just something we suggest. Let's make these changes. We have been resolved to make these changes in everyday part of our life. Number 1, we started respecting each other enough to have intentional, meaningful conversations. And that means to engage in conversation that will inform your spouse and build your spouse up. And it makes each other feel that you're one together. That I'm not communicating to you just so you need to hear me talk. We're talking to each other in order to truly have meaningful communication. We engage in conversation that made each other feel valued and appreciated. We started by waking up together every time, and it's like, well, I give her about 15 minutes to get in the shower, and then I go in there. But we wake up close to the same time. To where before, she would wake up and get ready to go, and then as she's getting ready to head out the door, I would wake up
Hmm.
an hour and a half later. We don't do that no more. We wake up.
Sometimes I would see you, and sometimes I wouldn't, depending
That's right.
on what time you got out of bed. So there might be mornings where I didn't even see you until you got home from work.
And we didn't have that good conversation spark in the morning, but now we do. We have that morning time together, and we start each day with a hug and a kiss. And that's not conversation, but
It is in a way.
yeah, I guess nonverbal conversation. I guess that's another episode we can talk about holiday. And we occasionally leave notes with each other. Sometimes we'll leave each other a note in our lunchbox, and she'll open her lunchbox.
Yeah.
We occasionally talk about that. We started texting each other throughout the day, and I try to do that every day. When she's having a rough day at school, and she's trying to get these young, awesome kids to learn and listen and better themselves, and it's just difficult. And she's stressed out. She can look at her phone at lunchtime. There's my husband. I love you. Oh,
Sometimes I don't see it right away, but I always try to respond when I do see it.
I'm thinking about you, and I hope you have a good day. I didn't do that before. We didn't do that 12 years before in our marriage, but we do now. Or I can't wait to see you tonight. You know, we made it a challenge to find different ways to communicate with each other. We are getting good at leaving post-it notes all over the house with notes
Yeah,
to
we
each
each
other.
have our collection on
Yeah.
the mirror in the bathroom. I
It's
posted
fun.
notes from him, and it's just something that's.
Start doing that, husbands and wives. Start doing it.
All right, we made time almost every night to put away whatever activity we were doing and spend time talking to each other. We originally agreed to a 1 hour time before we went to bed to sit on the couch and talk. Sometimes it was 30 minutes, sometimes it's more than an hour. It just kind of depends on what was going on. Sometimes we read a marriage devotional, sometimes we read the Bible together. Most nights we prayed before we went to bed. Occasionally we would designate a day in the week to have deep conversations. We have a folder that we kind of put ideas in and things we want to talk about, especially if there are things that are deeper conversations that we want to have. Hey, let's talk about this. Write it down.
What about this? And you go, wow. Let's think about it.
Yeah. So things we sat down and put in the folder are things like rules for communication, things we were doing good and things we need to do better on. How do we handle specific situations in our marriage, like financial decisions, church issues, communication issues, intimate issues, maybe even family issues, just whatever we want to talk about. And then our marriage do's and don'ts. We have a list where we said, here are things we're going to try to do. Here are things we're going to try not to do. And he kind of came up with some, I kind of came up with some. And then we both sat down and said, here's what we got. And then we just kind of put it together in a list.
And look, when you do stuff like this, a lot of the things, it's kind of no-brainers. But some things you may say, I want you to do this, or we need to do this, and we don't need to do this. You're like, oh, Dad, I've been doing that. Maybe quit.
Mm-hmm. And just, we're not perfect at these things, but these are things that we just try to be intentional about. And just depending on what's going on in the week, there are weeks we're better at it, and there are weeks we're not so better at it. But it is something that's a goal. It's something we try to do. So it's better than just not having any kind of a goal at all. So it is, we set that goal, and sometimes we do better at meeting it, and sometimes we don't. But at least we have that on our mind and something we're trying to do.
And sometimes, especially recently, life gets busy again, and you get stressed out. Sometimes you got, and sometimes you got to force yourself. So I'll say, come on, let's sit down together. We'll just sit down, and I'll just sit there like that.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's just watching a show or.
Yeah, we're in our 50s, so we like the old shows from the 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to do that. Take time for each other. And number 3, on the communication things we resolved to do better, we began truly listening to each other, listening to understand, not just yep.
Or listening to argue back.
Oh, why? Yeah. and valuing what each other had to say. We looked at each other, you know, yep, gave each other undivided attention. And that means putting away those phones. Sometimes turning off TV. Um, if you're listening to music or something, turn it off. Listen to your spouse. Listen to each other. Sometimes I would repeat what Lori had to say so I can, demonstrate that I understood her. Sometimes what are you trying to say? Am I hearing this right? Oh, okay. I just want to clarify. It's important to listen to understand. When we talked about our weekly plans or future plans, we might write those down. It's February it's February the 2nd. It's not too early to talk about what we're going to do in June because she's a school teacher and I got a job and the kids got things going on. So you don't want to wait till the last week of May to say, hey, in 2 weeks we need to go on a vacation. It's probably too late.
Yeah.
Plan it out early. Plan your year out as much as you can. And put things on a calendar. So when something comes up, say tomorrow we're going to go to that restaurant. What restaurant? What are you talking about? Talk about it. We always try to be on the same page. Make sure there's no misunderstanding or miscommunication. We make sure to clearly communicate important things such as finances. It's never been a problem with us. Most of the time, unless it's something small, we kind of got this number in our minds on when she goes out and spends $25 at the dollar store or Walmart. She ain't got to tell me about that, but she's like, if something costs $250, $500, we're going to communicate about it to each other. Or talk about something that needs to be done. This in the house needs to be fixed, or we need to take the car in for service or get an oil change, or we need to talk about things. Or a doctor's appointment. I got a doctor's appointment coming up soon, or the boys have got a doctor's appointment. Or there's something going on at school that we need to be a part of. We need to make sure we make time for the school event, church events. And we got something going on at church. We got to talk about that. One of the biggest things we discussed was for me to adopt my stepson. I'm not going to talk about the events that led up to that, but the oldest two boys are almost grown. Our middle-aged boy, Carter, he's in college, and he's almost 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he's pretty good at doing things on his own. He's very trustworthy. He's got a job. He's doing good in school. And he's at the point to where he's out doing his own thing. But he does come back and spend time with us. He's very respectful. And he's paying his own car payment. So that's good too. So it's Lori and I and the youngest boy. And he's kind of disconnected from his biological dad. Not going to get into that. So we took it upon ourselves to make the arrangement. She got through a commercial adoption agency. They drew up the papers that we signed and had formatted to take to the lawyer. And we talked about that for several months. We talked about it with Caden, our boys. Is this what you want to do? And so it was a communication thing that we went through. And we didn't take it lightly, but that was one of the things you had to sit down and talk about these things. You can't just think, wonder if he wants to do that. Talk to me about it. Let's talk about it. So we got that done. Okay, yeah. Number 4.
So we listed the anger issue below the ones we already talked about because we found out that if you're not having intentional quality conversations, you won't be able to resolve anger issues. A solid foundation of a conversation in a marriage allows you to work through problems. When you get mad at each other, you have disagreements. When you do or say something that upsets or hurts the other spouse, recognize that you did that and recognize how the other spouse feels and responds and be committed to make it right. Don't harbor resentment. Be quick to admit that you're wrong and be quick to forgive. And I'll be the first one to admit that I'm really bad about admitting when I'm wrong. I try.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Don't harbor resentment.
Mm.
We're pretty good about that, but every once in a while, we know this is Christ-centered marriage, and we're sinful. And every once in a while, our sinful nature takes over, and we remind each other about stuff we shouldn't do. So we're working on that. Don't harbor resentment.
Be quick to admit that you're wrong and quick to forgive. If you're not on the same page about an issue, find a way to do so. compromise when needed.
Right.
Don't go to bed with unresolved issues. They're not going to fix themselves. So
not.
that's something that we have had to
know
learn
that.
too. And sometimes we disagree on that sometimes because I'm like, well, I'm not ready to talk about it right now. He's like, well, we don't talk about it right now. We're just never going to talk about it. We're going to get up tomorrow and things are just going to go back to work and we're going to forget about it. So that's something we try to do is get things resolved quickly.
Right. And that involves us swallowing our own pride, humbling ourselves, and seeking to find a peaceful resolution. Okay, number 5. It's not the big one. Some people say this is the big one, but it's not. The big one is communication. This is the big one. All these other problems lead up to that. Sexual intimacy. Some people say that's the big one. A lot of men or women will cheat on their spouse because they're not satisfied with sexual intimacy. And it all starts with communication.
Mm-hmm.
When we began talking about our intimacy life, it started flowing and started getting better. And after this marriage conference, we kind of had a little second honeymoon.
Mm-hmm.
When we settled in, but we talked about how we're going to work on being more committed to making our physical intimacy life better. Ryan Frederick, in his book, I think it's Fierce Marriage, makes an analogy of a husband and wife coming together physically, intimately, when they come together. It's like renewing their marriage covenant. And in Genesis chapter 2, we talked about the man and woman become one, to become one, the one flesh thing. That's a reality when you come together intimately. And if you neglect that, you're neglecting that oneness. God made that, not just to make babies. And we're past the baby making times. But that's still something that we can enjoy, and God wants us to do it. God wants you to do that. Talk about it and work it out. When a man and woman in the covenant marriage come together in the act of physical intimacy, they are putting here. I just referred to that. Putting into action the words of Genesis 2:24, where two become one. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife. They shall become one flesh.
So originally we communicated with each other about we were going to set aside one night a week where we could be intimate. When we came home from the marriage conference,
That sounds crazy.
yeah,
Like, that ain't gonna work. But yeah.
well, when we came home from the marriage conference, it was just like whatever, whenever. We didn't really have a schedule at that point. But
our second honeymoon.
yeah, but after we kind of came back home and real life set back in, we kind of sat down and decided we were going to schedule our intimacy, and that's kind of our do's that went in along with our do's and don'ts list. Like we want to have at least 2 nights a week where we're intimate. We want to make sure we don't go longer than like 3 nights a week. Between unless we're sick or there's some extenuating circumstance, because then you just fall back into the habit of not ever being intimate.
That's
So
where the intentionality of it is put to the test. And there's some in times we had to say, we need to get together.
mm-hmm.
We just need to, whether we're ready or not. And then it eventually led to something great.
Mm-hmm.
And it always does. But we had to be intentional about it. Because if you don't, yeah.
And then we talk, about if tonight was the night, but we just had a really stressful day, or I have issues with my knee, and sometimes it's worse some days than others. So sometimes it's really bad. I'll be like, can we wait a day or whatever? And
You're up till 9:30 night trying to catch up on schoolwork.
Yeah.
For your teaching job.
So we talk about that, and we, it's nothing's set in stone, but we just having something on the calendar makes it be in your mind, and it makes you, kind of helps you prepare mentally for it too as well. So you kind of try to intentionally block out things that stress you out, or try to do things that help you relieve stress, or whatever it is that might be a block for you to do that. At least that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, it sounds kind of crazy, but it's been one of the best things we've done in our marriage, was to intentionally schedule it, and we sat down together early on and put in our phones. You know, we called it heart night. We threw a little heart in the phone. Anyway, so
We didn't give our secret away.
yeah, we gave her a cigarette.
It's all right.
It's
Somebody else might be thinking, you know what? At the marriage retreat, the speaker they said they had a little pillow,
oh yeah,
and then once there was different colors.
it was a
something.
tree,
Oh yeah.
and the tree had a bloom on one side and a
Ow.
not a bloom on the other side, or something like that. And so the wife would said when she was in the mood, she'd flip that pillow, and so the husband would, once he saw the pillow, he'd know. Okay, yeah, she flipped the pillow.
And you may not be able to go our route, or you may not be able just to, say we're going to schedule it. You may have different ways, but find a way to make it work.
Well, then the point is communicate about it,
That's right.
be in agreement with it.
And some of you younger folks that are not in their 50s, or 20s and 30s,
They don't have that
you
problem.
may, like Ryan and Selena, Ryan Frederick said that, hey, we even set aside one night of the year, kind of like how you have like a spring break or something. They said not one week a year to where they just
Every night.
every night, and it's like a rejuvenating time for them. So I probably don't work for you older folks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about it. One day we might do a show just on sex
Yes,
specifically.
we have to really think about this.
We'll have to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And we have a book. Was it Gary Chapman?
yeah, the
Maybe
married sex.
Married Sex, and we haven't read it for a while, and I think we've read most of the helpful parts, and it's getting into a lot of other parts that really don't relate to us, but we've read most of it, and a lot of it is just kind of eye opening, and a lot of it communication, communicating things to each other. That's the number one part of everything.
And I think that, and I think mindset.
Mindset.
At least that was for me, the mindset, because I had a negative mindset about it coming out of my divorce,
and I didn't put this on here, and something that Ryan Selena Fredericks, Fierce Marriage, look them up. You won't regret it. Trust me. They talk about the whole simmering thing.
Oh yeah.
They say when it came to physical intimacy, it's kind of like boiling water. You can't just put a pot of water on the stove and then 5 seconds later it's hot. It takes time. You gotta slowly boil it. And it's called, you gotta simmer it. Let it simmer for a while, then the heat rises. Next thing you know, the water's boiling, it's ready to go. It's kind of like with a husband and wife. I can't just, say, expect her to perform on demand. And you gotta, it's an everyday process. So if I know we intend on being intimate tonight, I need to probably start. I need to start probably 2 or 3 days earlier. The whole simmering, sweeten her up, and she can sweeten me up, and we can be intentional. And husbands, don't wait until the night you want to be intimate to sit down with your wife. That's why we talked about earlier. We sit down with each other and talk to each other, because after doing that 3 or 4 nights in a row, that leads up to the other things. And leaving each other post-it notes and waking up at the same time, the hugs and the kisses and the intentional greetings. When we come home from work, we greet each other, we hug and kiss, and we look at each other, and we tell each other we love each other, and hope you've had a good day, and I missed you. That's communication. That leads up to the physical intimacy. Without that, it's going to be hard. It's going to be forced. And a lot of marriages, there might be some physical intimacy, but a lot of it might be forced. Not in a bad way. It might be just going through the motions. That sounds better. Going through the motions. We're not trying to do that. We're trying not to go through the motions. We're trying to work up to it and do it in a way that is fun and is beneficial. Am I saying that right? You got to add anything?
Well, it's just like you said, you don't want it to be, well, let's just get it over with, or I'm just doing this to make, so they're not mad at me or whatever.
And whenever we first started our change, I had my boy, I don't know if she remembers this. It was probably back in June or late May. I told my boy, "Hey, come here. I'm gonna bend over by the dishwasher and I'm gonna start putting dishes in the dishwasher." So I was loading the dishes and I had him take a picture of me, and that was kind of like my
Oh.
signal for her. I'm trying to sweeten you up and I'm doing the dishes. you know,
Mm,
it's sometimes buying your wife chocolate or flowers, and that's your way of saying, I'm ready for you tonight. Sometimes that don't work as much as doing the dishes or sweeping the floor or
mhm,
cooking. Sometimes the most romantic thing you can do for your wife is to do the dishes.
mhm.
Yeah, take out the trash.
Yeah.
And that might get your wife turned on.
Do it regularly.
Do it
Don't do it
regularly.
just do it the day you want something.
Today's the day. I better do the dishes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so um a year ago we wouldn't be talking like this. A year ago we wouldn't sit down and talk about any of this, especially this last part, physical intimacy. And a lot of you are probably thinking, yeah, we don't talk about that either. But we do, and we're joking about it. We're having a good time because we have bettered our marriage. We're not the same two people we were in that last video. And again, if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch it. It talked about our communication problems. Now we've made it better. So finally, to wrap it up here, some things that affect your communication: the tone you use. You don't talk, okay, I guess I gotta talk to you now. Okay, woman, what do you want? Okay,
Mm.
yep. Are we done talking? Okay. No. Uh, husbands, well, I guess wives too. Use a soft tone. Kind of like why I'm talking now. That's a good way. And again, wives, don't be nagging. Or what's a negative tone for a wife?
Um, kind of talking down to your spouse, your husband, like they're stupid or
Yeah,
just sarcastic.
yeah, yeah. And especially in public,
Hmm.
don't begrudge your wife. Don't try to make negative jokes or sarcasm about your wife or your husband. That's not good. Uh, and then focus. Focus on what each other's saying. Pay attention. Be intentional. Let each other know that I am sincerely listening to you. You matter to me. What you're saying matters, and I'm taking it to heart. Um, good eye contact. Smile. Smile. Just, oh. There she goes again. There she goes again. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. Oh, blah 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 blah. Don't do that. What else? You got anything to add to that? Number two,
I don't think so.
attitude. Have a good attitude towards each other. Have a good attitude. That works too. We haven't always had a good attitude up until last year. And we starting to have a better attitude. Be intentional. Don't say, well, guess I better talk to her. I ain't talked to her in a while. Be intentional. Want to talk to your spouse. Enjoy talking to your spouse. Enjoy being around your spouse. Demonstrate that you truly want to communicate with your spouse. Understand. Understand each other. Don't take each other for granted. Don't miscommunicate. Listen. Ask for clarification if you don't understand. Anything else? Anything you guys want to say before we wrap it up? Did I miss anything? Did we miss anything?
I don't think so. Just, I think the big thing is just intentionality and just be intentional about communicating and what you want to communicate about and when you want to communicate. Just set a goal for yourself so you're not just kind of wandering, doing things randomly.
Yeah. So, hey, we hope you enjoyed these two episodes. Like I said, if you haven't saw the first one, I highly recommend, and hope you go back and watch our video from last week where we talked about our problems, and we had some doozies. Wow. And look, if you have any questions or comments, please comment, ask us questions. I'll leave our email address in here if you just want to email us privately. And like the old stick to go, hey, like us, thumbs up, subscribe, all that, whatever. But if you have any questions or comments, please leave them to us and we'll get back to you. We promise. Because we want to help you. That's what we're here for. We want to help you in your marriage. We want to help you communicate better. And we want to make sure that your marriage gets better, not just stop the cycle of divorce. We don't want you to just not get divorced. We, which a lot of people are staying together so prevent divorce. You cannot live in a marriage where you just don't want to get divorced.
Hmm.
You got to want to make your marriage better. It starts with communication. So if you have any questions, please respond back to us, comment or email us. I'll put email. The first comment's going to be our email address. So if you want to email us, please do. We will get back to you. If it's a woman question, she'll answer it. If it's a man's question, I'll answer it, or we can both answer it. Whatever you prefer. But we're here to help you. So thank you for watching. And next week, we're thinking about next week doing a live stream, our very first live stream, and where you can get on live with us and ask us questions in the chat room. So we're going to talk about that and figure out, and we'll do a short video announcing that. So stay tuned. We're going to do our very first live stream here pretty soon. So thank you and bye-bye.
Bye.